Great day, great day. This is Pastor Eric Little. I decided to take a moment to create a video just to kind of reach out to you, to talk to you about a growing epidemic that I believe is wreaking havoc in the church today. That's wreaking havoc in the lives of Christians all over this world. You know, have you ever asked yourself, why is it that we don't see the healings? Why is it that we don't see powerful manifestations that accompany the words that we speak and the messages that we hear on a weekly basis? You know, I think a lot of that is attributed to the personal lifestyle of the individual. I believe that pastors are preaching and teaching. I believe that, you know, as Christians, we go to the religious gatherings on Sundays and Saturdays and Wednesdays and all the days that we have moments that we come together to read the word, to hear the word, to do community activities and to do activities in the name of God. But I think we all have to come into the understanding that we have to examine our relationship with God. Our relationship with God is the thing that matters most over the religious activity. And you know, I've just written a new book called Are You Lukewarm? Now, this book was written primarily to reach out to Christians, just basically to give you a checkup. Because because this started with me. This checkup started with me in 2003, and ever since 2003, it's been a burden in my heart. And it's taken me at least 2 years to pen this book. But I penned this book because I don't want you to make the same mistake I made of living a double life. When I say double life, I'm speaking in reference to going and being at all the religious gatherings, you know, being a part of the worship teams, teaching, leading people to Christ. While I was in college, this all happened in around 2003. But I was living a double life. I was, in relationships with a young lady, and we were sexually active, and there were some things that we did that I wasn't, proud of. But and all of us have made, compromised decisions, and it wasn't her fault it wasn't her fault. It was my fault. It was my fault because it's my relationship with God, and this is her relationship with God. We all have to check where we stand in our relationship to God and how we live when nobody is watching, and all of that has a lot to do with the state and the condition of your heart. And my question is, are you lukewarm? In Revelations chapter 3, the Father spoke to the 7 churches, and one of the churches he reached out to, and I could talk about the other ones, but I want to speak about the church of Laodicea. He said, I know your ways. You're neither hot nor cold. I would rather you be hot or cold, but because you've chosen to be lukewarm, I spew you from my mouth. And that's a horrible indictment to hear God say, I have to disconnect myself. I have to spew you from my mouth because you are not choosing to be all the way with me. You're kind of in the middle. And isn't that where some people may find themselves? It may be you, maybe friends, but this is for pastors. This will be a great book for you to purchase and get to your leaders, and maybe even, people who are the closest to you that are operating in leadership around you, because we want to make sure that we all have a heart check, because we can sometimes replace relationship with God with religious activity. Now, this book wasn't written to be harsh and to bash anybody. It's just to kind of tug at our heart to make sure that we're moving in the right direction, because we don't want to find ourselves at the place where God has to say, depart from me, you workers of iniquity. I never knew you. K-N-E-W. I didn't have a relationship with you. You moved off into things that didn't have anything to do with my plan and purpose for your life because you were not in relationship with me. So I just want to take a moment to introduce this book to you and give you a chance to make this investment in the life of your leaders if you're a pastor. And if you are a Christian, especially a new believer, this is a good book for you to have in your hands. If you look down at the link below, I have the link that you can click on to Amazon.com. This book is made available on Amazon. I challenge you, it's only like a $10 investment, but it will be something that may change your relationship with God. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to share, because this is something that cannot afford to be looked over. Thank you. This is Pastor Little, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
The Bible says that God is love, but there is one love that God hates. That's coming up next on The Beat. Hey everyone, my name is Alan Parr. Thank you all so much for tuning into The Beat. Today we're talking about what it looks like to be a worldly Christian, and it is my belief that one of, if not the biggest problem within Christianity today is we have too many Christians who profess to be Christians on the outside, but their lifestyle would prove otherwise. The Bible actually teaches that there are 4 different classes of people. There is the non-Christian, the baby Christian, the worldly Christian, and then the spiritual Christian. And so today, we want to focus on what a worldly Christian looks like. Speaking to Christians, James says that friendship with the world is hatred towards God. As a matter of fact, he goes on to say that when we love the world, that we are actually making ourselves an enemy of God. Jesus himself said to a church in the first century, he says, hey, I wish that you were either cold or hot. Now, he wasn't saying, I wish that you were saved or unsaved, but rather he was suggesting that cold water is good and useful, and so is hot water. But he says lukewarm water is useful for nothing, and actually when I taste it, I want to spit it out of my mouth. So what exactly does it look like to be a worldly Christian? Well, let's break this up into 2 categories. First, we have beliefs. Paul said in Romans 12, do not be conformed to the image of this world. In other words, do not let the world system that we are surrounded in squeeze us into our mold, but rather he says that we should be transformed by the renewing of our minds. A recent poll showed that 57% of all professing Christians believe that there is another way to get to heaven other than Jesus Christ. When Christians are too ashamed to take a stand for truth because it's unpopular, we are trending towards worldliness. When Christians believe that because our society has evolved, that it's okay for us to redefine marriage as being between 2 people of the same sex, or when Christians believe that it's okay for 2 consenting adults to live together before a marriage because it's financially feasible, we are trending towards worldliness. And Jesus says, whenever I taste this, I want to spit it out of my mouth. The reason why this angers God so much is because it reveals that we fear the rejection of men and value the opinions of men over the opinion of God. The second thing that characterizes a worldly Christian is not only their beliefs, but also their behavior. If you are living in consistent, perpetual sin, that does not necessarily make you a worldly Christian, but if your heart is no longer tender and remorseful and grieved over your sin, that could be a sign that you are trending towards worldliness. The Bible describes this as a seared conscience, comparing it to skin that is now burned and insensitive to feeling. The second sign that a Christian could be trending towards worldliness is spiritual stagnancy. Paul said to the Corinthian church, he says, I could not speak to you as I would spiritual people. He said, I had to talk to you as though you belonged to the world. Why? Because since the time that they were saved, they had not yet progressed in their knowledge of God to get to the point where they were able to receive the deeper teachings that Paul had to give them. It's certainly normal and natural for all of us to go through high seasons and low seasons. But if there is a long period of time where we are not growing in our knowledge of God, our understanding of God, our prayer life, our Bible study, our service, our victory over sin, that could very well be a warning sign in our lives that we could be trending towards worldliness. Finally, John said that we could be trending towards worldliness if these 3 things are dominating our lives. First of all, he says the lust of the flesh. In other words, this is when we allow ourselves to be dominated with the strong desire to gratify our physical flesh and to do all sorts of different things that would make our flesh feel good. Second of all, he says the lust of the eyes. And this is when we lust after what we see. And as a result, our minds are consumed and dominated with this need to accumulate more wealth and to get more possessions so that we can have more rather than to give more. And then finally, he says the pride of life. And this is whenever we are absorbed with ourselves and do things to make ourselves look good in front of other people. We are driven by our need for attention, our need for success, and our need for recognition. And so rather than being negatively influenced by the darkness that we have in our society today, the Bible says that we as Christians should shine as lights in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation. If you found this video helpful in any way, feel free to share it with a friend. Also, if you haven't done so already, I would love it if you would subscribe. Check out some of the other videos on this channel. Hey guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what it looks like to be a worldly Christian. Leave them in the comment section below. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time on The Beat.